Welcome back to the Movie Draft House. I'm your host, Mark, joined by co-host Jeff.
Oh, baby, the lights are so bright. They're shining in my eyes. I'm ready to make my entrance.
That's just the ring camera, by the way.
It's the professional wrestling month. I have to say professional wrestling because if I don't, some people will try to put in amateur wrestling, and nobody wants that crap.
I still think the movie Waves would have been good.
Regardless of the quality of the film, it would not have met the theme.
Oh, okay. All right. But before we get into what we watched this week, Jeff,
Hey,
we got to plug some music.
and it's my turn. So this is my debut at getting music. So this month's music is brought to you by Flipside and his song Cream of the Crop. You can find it on YouTube and Spotify. And we thank him or her, I'm pretty sure it's a him, at least based on their YouTube logo, for allowing us to use their music on the pod this month. And now, Mark, you're the one who has to wait to hear it. But you don't have to wait that long because you edit and I'll send it to you here this evening.
Yes. Hit the show notes so you can get the links to all their social media.
It is on theme for the month. Yeah, look at the show notes for the social medias. Yeah, I forgot that part. That's where you come in.
That's okay. I'm a professional.
I'm not.
That's why, sometimes we have to load each up on each other's backs.
So,
anyways,
Mark,
Jeff.
No, Mark, since we flipped it.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
What did we watch this week?
All right. The month is May 2024.
Oh, baby.
And it's Professional Wrestling Month here on the podcast. This is probably long awaited, long sought after.
Most
Jeff's only reason for being here.
That's false. If I wanted to watch just the wrestling movies, I would have started my own podcast and done it by now.
But you kind of did.
Not with just wrestling movies.
Oh, well, you did a wrestling podcast.
I did.
Yeah. But, so this month we're watching professional wrestling movies, and they have to have actual wrestling in them.
Yeah, it has to be a pro wrestling setting. It can't just be like...
It can't just have The Rock in it.
Right. That's too easy for one. In most of his movies, he doesn't wrestle.
Right.
I want to see a wrestling ring and at least one match. I think that's fair. So we'll see what the other movies do. But this week, what did we watch?
So this week, we watched From the Year of Our Lord.
Oh, yes. The first time I think we've watched a movie that predates both of us.
1978. It's rated PG and runs at an hour 47 minutes. We watched the Sylvester. I'm pretty sure this is his directorial debut.
I think so.
But it's a film written and directed by and starring Sylvester Stallone. We watched Paradise Alley.
Yes.
Jeff, please, why did you pick this one?
I've never seen it. I am a Sly Stallone fan. I like Rocky a lot. I love the Rambo films. And this is it's post Rocky, I think pre First Blood, and I hadn't seen it, and I also haven't seen his arm wrestling movie Over the Top, which I don't know if he directed that, but I imagine the plot's very similar to this, where it's just this is his wrestling version of Over the Top or a wrestling version of Rocky. Now we'll get into whether it's as good as those. But the main reason I picked it is when I was looking through wrestling movies, I didn't know this existed. I didn't know there was a wrestling movie with Sly Stallone. So I'm like, well, gotta watch it. And that's why I picked it, Mark. The synopsis reads, three Italian-American brothers living in the slums of 1940s New York City try to help each other with one's wrestling career using one brother's promotional skills and another brother's con artist tactics to thwart a sleazy manager. That's from IMDb.
Yeah.
Why do you sound so down? It's wrestling month.
No, I'm excited for the month. I didn't much care for the film.
Oh, okay. Is that because it's from the 70s?
No, actually, I was pleasantly surprised by the production value of this film. For being a late 70s film, I was like, you know what? This isn't terrible. The production value.
That's all we can hope for.
Right. It was high quality camera work. It was the setting and the costumes and kind of just the sets. It was authentic, and so I didn't have a problem with how this film was portrayed. And the technology,
it's a period piece of the 40s,
right?
So they had to have all the cars and the attire and the setting, like you said, and all of that felt good and looked good.
Right, it did, and it looked good. So if the film looks good, I think at bare minimum you can put it on and not be distracted by graininess or.
But I like the grain.
I know you do, but I don't much care for it. And but this wasn't that. This wasn't distracting at all. It felt like a film that you could tell was made a while ago. But if you didn't know 1978, I doubt you would have guessed 1978. And so when I'm watching, and the opening credits kind of give it away that like it's an older film, but
what you think of that song? That Paradise song.
I mean, it's funny, like just the way films.
You know who's singing it?
I don't.
Sly.
Are you serious?
Yep. It was written by someone else, but that is Sly Stallone singing that opening song.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I thought that added to it.
That's amazing. He's a Renaissance man,
isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he literally did it all in this film, but.
He really did.
I know, hey, right?
Sly, we know you're writing, directing, and starring in this, but we need an opening song. He's like, bro, chill.
Right, I got you.
I got it. Give me in the studio. But you never sung before. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Let's go.
Like,
some would call this his labor of love, his masterpiece.
He's... The problem I have with this film, and it's not any one particular thing. It's kind of a culmination of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But the main thing I have that just bugs me about this is that Sylvester Stallone's the main character, and not his brother. The autistic one, or whatever you want to call him. I don't know. The guy with the issues.
He's certainly not as educated.
Correct.
As others.
What's his name? It's not Victor?
That would be Victor, yeah.
Yeah.
He does seem to be he's huge.
Right.
He's a big, huge guy. But he does seem to be a little slow. Just maybe not educated as much, and he has this girl that he's interested in, and she's teaching him words, and he's maybe not as dim as people give him credit for.
No, but like I felt like I was rooting more for his character than all the others, and he had the motivations, clear motivations in the film.
Well, his brothers are dicks, is the problem.
Right, and so a lot of this film suffers from most of the people in this film being highly unlikable, and
now that's a Jeff complaint there. That's the complaint I usually make.
Right, but like Sylvester Stallone, he's not a likable character in this film. His brother, highly unlikable.
So they flip, right? So
yes,
at the beginning,
correct.
you're like, oh, Sly's being a real prick. He's an asshole. Like, he's just trying to sell his family out for money and pressure him into doing things they don't want to do just for his own gain. And then, like, at about the 2/3 mark, I'd say at about 30 minutes left in the movie, it flips. Sly's like, hey, we're kind of taking advantage of our brother. We need to stop doing this. And the other brother, Lenny, who's kind of the brains of the group, is very much gotten into this wrestling promoter mentality, and he sort of is willing to put his brother in the line of fire, and Sly's the one trying to stop him. So it's interesting. I think the idea is interesting that they both would sort of have an intersection and flip sides, but I think the movie would have been better if they had given that more time to kind of do that. So
the motivations by the characters are unclear. They
change, right? Like
right. Yes.
The motivations of Sly are clear at the beginning of the movie. He just wants money. And then the younger brother is really just kind of, or the older brother, maybe the Lenny, the doctor, or I think he's like he's coroner or something.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, he cuts up dead bodies. And he is just kind of going with the flow while Sly's trying to get his hustle on. And then once they realize they have this cash cow in their brother as a professional wrestler, then it kind of flips, right? But it doesn't happen. It almost happens like a light switch. So like as soon as this older brother who's been resistant to having Victor be a wrestler, pretty much once he signs up for it, he's gung-ho, and then that's it. His whole mindset's changed. And I think maybe Sly takes a little longer to come around. Like he realizes, hey, we're pushing him too hard, and then he kind of gets to that place. So I'm a little more okay with Sly's arc. But the other brother just really felt sort of like turned on a dime to me.
Yeah, and a lot of things that happen in this film, they don't really serve a purpose.
So have you watched Rocky, the first one?
Oh, it's been a long time, but yes, I've seen it.
The first Rocky is slow. It really is almost like a slice of life movie to a degree, because it really just shows him kind of going about his usual business, being a bit of he's like an enforcer for not the mob, but he gets paid to kind of enforce, bully people a little bit to get them to pay up. So I guess for the mob, and then, he kind of slowly, that story is really kind of unraveling as you're watching him do a lot of other sort of mundane things. And I think maybe Sly was going for that here to recreate that element. The problem is it goes way too slow. Like it takes
a good
45 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
Or more.
For us to get to
where
wrestling.
You see a wrestling ring.
Yes.
And what I'm here for is the whole wrestling story. And there's all this, what I would call character development up front, but it's just really slow. And I think they developed the characters enough about halfway through that character development. You really get the idea of where they are in their place. But it just kind of keeps going. And there's this love story between, it's like a love triangle. There's this one woman that used to date one of the brothers. Now Sly is into her, but then they hook back up the other brother, and there's no reason for it.
Right.
I don't get why it's here, because the main story doesn't need it. And then Sly finds another girl, or he's got a girl he's been with forever. Doesn't matter.
Right. Neither relationship paid dividends. And
it didn't. I guess you could maybe look at it as being part of what drives a wedge between two of the brothers, but they don't actually have any emphasis on that. Like that this is what's happening. They never really have much of a conversation about it. There's a couple little yelling things like, you were leading me on, but they weren't. Like, she never led him on the whole time. She's like, we're friends. And he's like, you've led me on. I called you friends the whole time.
No, he just says, I'm sensitive.
Oh, I'm sensitive.
Like 80 times he says, I'm sensitive.
I'm sensitive. He's this big tough guy who runs his mouth all the time, but he always puts other people in the way.
Right.
So like when he meets the I don't want to call him the main bad guy, but Stitch, he was sort of like it's his own little mob. He's got a handful of guys that roll with him, and they hustle. One of those guys is a gigantic man by the name of Frankie the Thumper, who is played by professional wrestler Terry Funk.
Oh, I knew you would bring the history. Let's go.
Yeah, so Terry Funk, I almost didn't recognize him in this because his face was so fat and round. But I like the voice was hitting me, and I'm like, and I had saw that Terry Funk was in the titles, opening titles, and I'm like, huh. And then finally it clicked. I'm like, oh shit, that's Terry Funk. And there's like a couple moments where he really goes into doing Terry Funk wrestling thing where he's like, oh, I'm going to shit on your mother and blah, blah, blah. Like, that I really appreciated. And then finally, when you get to the final sequence, because I don't know if any of these other people are wrestlers. So the guy that plays Big Glory, who is a pro wrestling character in the movie, is played by an actor, Frank McRae, who I mostly know. He was in a movie called 1941 by Steven Spielberg, and he was in another movie called Loaded Weapon 1, where he plays the police captain, that I really love that movie, and he's great in it. But he's not a professional wrestler.
Let's talk about Big Glory for a minute and how
let's talk about
weird his fucking arc was.
What happened with his like? Okay.
They go. I was behind the whole sequence of him and Stallone having this night on the town.
Man, that was a great part of the movie. There's some really good stuff in this movie, though.
And then he goes, you know what?
I'm done.
This was good, but I'm gonna go kill myself now.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense because
I was like, what the fuck?
So Big Glory is like the biggest, baddest wrestler at Paradise Alley, which is this bar that has a wrestling ring in it, which is dope. If there was a bar in town, which in the town we live in, they often have wrestling events down at one of the old bars downtown.
But it's small people wrestling.
No.
Tiny
Fest
people.
wrestling is regular sized human. There are sometimes little people wrestling shows, but regular sized, normative sized. I don't know what the proper nomenclature is, but they have it downtown. But the ring is only put up for the wrestling events. It feels like this is a wrestling bar. Like you go there and there's always wrestling happening.
Yeah.
And so there's this undefeatable guy, Big Glory's kicking everyone's ass. And you get to meet him, and he's this really sad, depressed guy. He's given all his money away to his handler. And his handler's like, I'm just saving it up for you. Don't worry. But we all know that he's not. Why is he living in the boiler room of Paradise Alley?
Right.
And he tends to end up being this sort of tragic character, but his ending is so silly.
It's dumb. Like
so
his
I
final
set it up a little bit.
His final scene is just dumb.
So Sly is basically estranged from both of his brothers to a degree. Not so much Victor, his youngest brother, but certainly his older brother. And so he wants to have a night out. He goes and finds Big Glory. They go and get some drinking done. And then they start driving a truck, and they drive through everyone's porch or whatever you want to call it, the steps leading up to. They wreck an entire street.
DUI did not exist in the 40s, apparently.
It was awesome. It was my favorite part because they're just plowing into everything, getting fucked up. They drive into Stitch, who again is like the mob boss. They drive into his bar and then laugh in his face, and then Big Glory wiggles his ass and they leave. And so they find themselves at like a port.
Yeah.
And they're drinking and they're both pretty well wasted. And Big Glory's like, well, I'm out of here. I'm going to go jump in this water and kill myself. And Stallone's like, wait, what? He goes, well, you see, I'm miserable all the time. But when I'm miserable, I don't want to kill myself. But now that I'm happy, I want to go out while I'm happy. Well, I don't understand. But
and then yes,
he jumps off the bridge to kill himself, and he lands on a big pile of trash or something, and he lives. And Sly looks down, and he's like, "Oh, you're okay." Like, kind of laughs at him because it's funny. And he's like, "Come back up," and he's like, "No, fuck that." And then he jumps in the water from like 1 foot off the ground, and then I guess he's drowning. It didn't make any damn sense. It was hilarious.
His last words was like, "Oh, you can't even fucking kill yourself, right?"
and
like, and I'm like, "Wait, what is happening in this film
Why
right
is this
now?"
character? First off, I wouldn't want this movie to not have Big Glory because he's awesome. But this scene is crazy. It did kind of make the movie for me a little bit, but it's crazy.
It's so out of play. Like I've never
seen anything like it.
Right. And it's funny. Like, it's fun. It's intentionally trying to be funny because, like, it's just so off the walls, batshit.
Yeah. It felt like it was in a slapstick movie.
Yeah. It was just, and then fucking Stallone just like, oh well.
Okay. Walks away, doesn't dive in after him. He's like, well, he convinced me that this is what he wants to do. I'm moving on.
And that man
like,
is
he didn't
dead.
Think, hey, maybe come on board with our team. We're going places. My brother's making money. You're a professional wrestler. You can help. Like, he doesn't
tag
give
team
the
that
guy
shit.
Anything to go off of.
Right.
It's crazy.
It is. And like, the weird shifts in this film get me is because, like, we went from Stallone and his brother, his brothers, fighting for money to Stallone fighting with this girl that he likes, but she's been up front with him, and he's just like yelling at nothing. And then he goes,
a lot.
This entire film is yelling.
Oh my gosh, he's just so annoying because he tries to have game, like when he's spitting at the women, and it just sucks. And he just talks so much, and it kind of is like Sly wrote the script, directed the film, and he just gave himself a shitload of dialogue. And if you watch Rocky, everything is so much more subdued. And there's a reason I compare this to Rocky, because I honestly think he was trying to make a pro wrestling version of Rocky. And he just gave himself insane amounts of dialogue. And he just doesn't shut up. And he keeps yapping. Now, part of this, the scenes I do like are when he's talking to Stitch, like the opening, one of the early scenes in the bar where he's talking with Stitch.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. I think he really.
I actually think the villain of Stitch is underused in this film.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, he's a good foil, and I just like. There is a decent film somewhere in this.
Yeah, it's called Rocky. That's the problem, right? Rocky already exists. But I think that maybe this is supposed to be more about the three brothers and family, because at the end of the movie, that's kind of like they all hug and they've made up and they realize that being in brothers is more important than being successful. But the rule. Go ahead.
Again, it's like we were focused on the wrong. Like, Stallone decided to make a film about himself, his character, rather than focus on the actual interesting one of his brother Victor. And like the actor that played Victor, charismatic. Victor's character was charismatic. Victor's character actually had meaning and motivation. I mean, it's just his character on the supporting side was the most interesting one. And
yeah, he's like a gentle giant.
Yeah,
and really soft spoken, but they show off his power at one point. He picks Terry Funk, Frankie the Thumper, over his head, and Terry Funk looks massive.
They're both massive human beings.
They're both big guys, yeah.
But like, I feel like if this film had focused on the character of Victor rather than the character of Lenny or Cosmo, the film would have been much better than what it was. Is because the actor Lee Canalito, who plays Victor, he's very good. He's very soft spoken. He's he wears a lot of emotion on his face without saying a lot. I did think it was kind of the camera work here was kind of wild. Like the whole arm wrestling scene where it's just like close up camera shots of them sweating.
So that's what made me think of because I think Over the Top came out after this. Let me check, because I think Over the Top's an '80s movie.
It's just like it's like beads of sweat pouring down their face, and they're both making.
Over the Top was '87. Yeah,
they're both making these faces.
It is so good. It's like they're both constipated.
Right.
So
right.
So the first meeting between Terry Funk, that's how I'm going to refer to him, and Victor in this movie is an arm wrestle, and it is maybe one of the most overly. Now I haven't watched. Again, I keep bringing up Over the Top because it's an arm wrestling movie, and I haven't seen what that looks like. But in this, there's a montage, like a montage of this arm wrestle. And I can't think that an arm wrestling match ever has lasted more than 5 minutes tops. And that's a marathon arm wrestle, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
It feels like the movie wants you to think they've been here for 30, 40 minutes.
Hours.
One arm wrestling going forever. They're both sweating bullets. Now, one thing I do like is Victor is very placid in his face. It almost looks like if it weren't for the sweat, it looks like he wasn't having to put in a ton of effort at all. And eventually he wins. But that scene was crazy because it was just kept going. And I'm I thought it was going to be a real quick ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh,
right.
I've seen arm wrestling matches in movies before, and they go oh, you almost beat, oh, I win. And that's not what happened. It was insane.
It's, I mean, I didn't mind it. The camera work is wild because it is such close-up shots, and
oh yeah,
it's just, it's a weird scene, but it's entertaining because it's the first, And what they're arm wrestling for is the rights to $100 and a monkey.
Yes. So Stallone,
he bets $100.
I don't know what this monkey has to do with fucking anything.
Nothing.
So
nothing.
The monkey apparently had been stolen, and Stitch has the monkey, and Stallone thinks, hey, if I get that monkey, I'm going to make a ton of money. So he challenges. He's like, hey, my brother can beat Terry Funk in an arm wrestle. I'll bet you $100 and you put that monkey on the line. And the guy's like, sure. But Stallone doesn't have the $100. He's just talking out his ass. But so he gets the monkey. And then we see two scenes, one of which was a little disturbing. He has the monkey literally tied up.
Yeah.
Hanging from whatever. And you're like, whoa, you can't do that today. And then the monkey, he goes to be on the corner, check out the dancing of the monkey, but the monkey doesn't do shit.
Right.
And then we don't see the monkey again.
Ever again. It's gone.
I didn't get it.
Listen, this movie, all right, 1978, so we're talking almost 40 years ago. It's a weird study in filmmaking. Then you didn't have to have certain story beats. You didn't have to have conclusions to your arcs. You just had to you had to focus on a couple main characters, and you had to have a good conclusion scene, and then your film was greenlit, right? And so I don't know what studio made this movie. I don't know how much.
It was Universal. Right. So because they had that old school Universal logo at the beginning, because the movie takes place in the 40s.
Right.
And so they had that old school Universal logo, which I appreciated. I thought that was a nice touch.
I just don't know how much money did they throw at Stallone to make this film. I mean, it had to have been quite a little bit.
Rocky.
Right.
right?
So they're giving him a good budget here, is because the sets in this film are really good.
As soon as you go period piece, it just, to me, I would think, as someone who doesn't make movies, that would make your budget inflate, because you got to buy all this stuff. So the budget was $6 million estimated, and then it made $7 million in the box office.
What is $6 million?
That's a failure.
What's $6 million today?
Okay, well, this is going to take me a while.
Oh God, don't do the math.
No, you can.
But
no, it's 1 plus 1. So
I just
million,
it's
19. What do we say? 78.
Yeah, 1978
today.
Right. It's got to be
28 million.
Okay, it wasn't as much as I thought it was going to be, but the film looks good, and so that's what kept me kind of really glued to it, is that the film looked good. And no matter the yelling from Stallone and the weird story arcs from the relationships that don't really matter, it was all for nothing. But I really enjoyed looking at it. I enjoyed the sets. Like, I mean,
this wasn't a shit show.
No.
Like, I mean, you didn't walk away like...
No, this is far from it.
There are parts that I genuinely enjoyed. I liked that his name was Kid Salami, and he's like, we're going to make you wear salami to the ring. And then Stallone's like, what kind? He goes, Genoa, without even thinking about it. Like, he knew the salami he was going to use. It's insane.
The final the way the final wrestling match was shot.
The shooting. I loved it with the rainstorm,
the slow-mo. I didn't realize that they had that technology in the 70s.
What I liked about this is they're inside this wrestling area. They've been the whole time in Paradise Alley, but today it's raining, and they just said, fuck fixing the roof.
Right.
All the water's coming in. Like, it is not stopping much at all. And the ring has like an inch of water on it. So when they're having the last wrestling match between Terry Funk and Victor, it's water shooting everywhere. There's times where the lights kind of flicker out and there's lightning hits, and it just looks cool.
No, it's well done from a period standpoint where their like unitards look very like 70-ish, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a
I mean, back
fan.
in this era, they pretty much like what Terry Funk wears,
right?
Which is basically a pair of trunks, they look like a Speedo. That's pretty much what Terry Funk wore in the ring, right? At that time.
But
not in the 40s, but
but like
certainly in the 70s.
The entire match is just it's kind of slow motion with montage. It's, in my opinion, it's well done. And I'm just like, and I was actually.
I gotta say.
All right.
Okay. We appreciate that you enjoyed the way this looked, but I got to talk about the actual wrestling.
Okay.
The rules, unless wrestling was different in the 40s, and maybe it was.
Probably
it might
was.
have been.
Yeah.
They did this. They treated it like a boxing match. They had rounds.
Yeah.
Which they don't do in wrestling, at least modern wrestling. And it threw me off because they kept going round after round. And then how many rounds did he go to? 22?
22,
his birthday's on the 22nd.
Yeah.
Did they just go to unlimited rounds? Why even have round breaks in between if we're just going to be here all fucking night?
Why was the guy ringing the bell the entire time?
I didn't get that either, because in pro wrestling, when you're ringing the bell,
that means you won.
Well, yes, or there's like a fight going on, and it's always annoyed me in wrestling when like there's a fight going on, they'll ring the bell to try to get them to stop. It never works.
Yeah.
And I hate it. I was like, why are you doing that? It's just annoying me. But they do that in this movie, but it's while they're having the wrestling match. I didn't get it. Now, I will say, so the wrestling before this final match with Terry Funk it's like push the guy out of the ring and you win, right? That's our match. And they just push each other. There weren't a lot of body slams or suplexes or hip tosses or anything that's actually looked like professional wrestling. When you get to the final match and Terry Funk's in there, who's one of the greats, you get wrestling. They start to do some really cool stuff. Hip tosses, body slams, all that, and it actually starts to turn into a wrestling movie finally in the last, 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah, and it's the last 20 minutes are exciting is not the right word, because there wasn't really a lot of exciting, because you never really felt like one over the other had an upper hand or was like on their way to winning this match. But the motivation,
go ahead.
Well, the motivation, behind the match, he bets, Victor bets $9,000, his entire savings, on this match, and he recognizes that that's enough to get him out with this girl that he really likes, and so like his motivations are very clear. He's bet all of his money on himself to get him and this girl out of New York and, wherever they're trying to go.
Houseboat. He wants a houseboat.
Right.
He does. He says
I know. And so you're rooting for him is because his motivation is what he wants to get away with this girl that he likes. And she treats him well in the scenes that we see of them. And he's really fallen for her because she's helping him learn and all this. And he's kind of this big teddy bear. And every time he was on screen, I was like, damn, why does this movie not have more of him in it? And so the last 20 minutes or so, I'm just like, okay. And then the final sequences drove me I hated it.
Please explain.
Because,
like, which sequence are you talking about?
I'm talking about where he was sandbagging.
Oh.
Because he was trying to throw the whole thing for fucking what? I don't know. And then he decides...
Oh, he tells you at the end. He just wants to go back to when they were brothers.
He just wants to go back to when they were brothers. But that flies in the face of the entire groundwork that was laid for his motivation for fucking fighting the entire time. It was like Sylvester Stallone just took a shit on his entire movie. And I was like, what the fuck? That made no sense. It made no sense. And then
I'm guessing.
And then he just decides in round 22 that he's gonna fucking get up and actually win. And it's like, wait a minute, no, that doesn't work.
But then they were happy to be brothers again,
right?
You didn't notice that? Like, it doesn't make sense, and it isn't well done in any way. I didn't like if you Rocky 2. Which there's Rocky and Rocky 2, and they're two amazing movies. I personally like 2 a little bit more.
I do as well.
But both of those movies bring an emotional response out of you. This tries to and fails.
Right. It doesn't. I got zero emotion out of this film, other than like kind of the confused, and like puzzled emotion of why
like,
certain things were done.
Why did he try to jump in the ocean again?
Right. And
he's in a good mood?
I mean, I guess got on a high note, but the Sylvester Stallone in the 70s, filmmaking was different. I mean, I acknowledge that. But like, I mean, Scorsese was making good films in the 70s. So, I mean, it's not like everybody was making bad films. But at the end of the day, I applaud Stallone for making a halfway decent film. But it's like there's just little things that he just probably should have just not done, and the film turns out to be pretty good. And I don't know. It's a weird movie, man.
Yeah,
it's a weird movie from like the beats of how things happen.
Yeah, I can't argue with it. But I do, again, when I watch it, I see what he's trying to go for, and it just shows you that even though he wrote Rocky,
Right.
right, and he starred in Rocky, someone else directed it. Someone else was able to guide that movie to a little more success. So I get it. I think I got something out of this movie still, though. The whole stuff with Big Glory was ridiculous. I liked seeing Terry Funk in a wrestling movie. I was here for that. And I don't regret watching it, but man, it felt like it dragged a lot at the beginning.
It did.
It just took its time. But the opening sequence where they're running across the rooftops is silly and fucking stupid, but I like it. I like that Stallone sings the opening and closing song. It just, what other movie does that? Right. And I kind of think like this movie maybe deserves more attention for what it is. Not because it's great, but if someone told me that this existed, I would have watched it. It's like, it's a wrestling movie with Sylvester Stallone. He wrote, directed, acts, and sings the theme song. I'm like, I need to go watch this immediately.
So like, I try to think about like who working today in Hollywood could do something similar to this. And like, this is something that The Rock would kind of, I guess, throw his weight behind. However, he's never directed a film. Something like maybe a Robert Downey Jr. or a Chris Evans. But like at the end of the day, like we just don't get that anymore in film. We don't get these high level, and at this point, you know, because of the success of Rocky, Stallone is, I mean, he's not the megastar yet, but he's a star. And Universal wouldn't have thrown the money behind this film that they did and give him the autonomy that they did to make this film if they didn't think that he was a star. So, like, this film probably doesn't get made the same way today, and I think that's something to hang your hat on, is that, you know, Sylvester Stallone had the opportunity to make a film where he wrote, directed, starred in, played fucking music, sang in it. I mean, it's just, I mean, he was literally the everything man in this film, and it's not a good film, but it's also not a terrible film, right? It's kind of your like film. And I'm just going to jump to my recommendation. I'm not going to recommend it.
Right.
But I'm appreciative that I watched it, is because I think it's something that needs to be seen, is because you're talking about Sylvester Stallone. You're talking about a Rushmore actor.
Wow, Rushmore, huh?
Well, no, you're talking, I mean, he's got to be in conversation of Rushmore for action.
For action.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, like him, Arnie,
Jean-Claude
Van Damme.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Right. And so you're talking about one of the all-time greats and their artistry. And I think that's something that deserves to be talked about. And it's something that, you know, there is a museum that exists, or a Hall of Fame that exists for Hollywood actors, and this man is in it. And this film is part of his legacy. And so, like, it deserves to be seen. It deserves to be talked about, even though it wasn't good.
So this is his directorial debut.
Yeah.
The very next year, he directed Rocky 2.
Okay.
So, Rocky 2, as I said, is my favorite Rocky.
It's a good film.
Then he directed the rest of the Rockies. I don't think he did 5. He did 3, 4.
Did he do a Creed
Rocky
film?
Balboa. A what film?
A Creed film?
No, he did Rambo, which wasn't that great, and then The Expendables.
Oh.
And Staying Alive.
So he kind of fell off a cliff. I got you.
I mean, Rocky 4 is good. Rocky Balboa is really good.
No, the Rocky films are really good, and like he found his wheelhouse in those films. And I think that's what he was trying to do here, is he was trying to find his place. And this film helped him get to where he ended up. And I think in that mindset that this film should be seen by fans of Sylvester Stallone and fans of the action sports dramas, and which was what the Rocky movies are, the Creed films, any boxing film you've seen, any type of sports film that has any type of physical aspect to it. But at the end of the day, I'm appreciative of watching this film. So, tip of my cap to you, sir. It wasn't a waste of time, right? I guess that's what I'm getting at. It wasn't a waste of time, even though the movie wasn't good. I'm not going to recommend it. It wasn't a waste of time.
Right. I won't recommend it either, but I'm glad I watched it, is how I would put it. There are movies that we've watched that are shitstorms, and I'm like, God, why?
Right.
But I'm glad I watched this, and I could see myself watching it again, maybe. I mean, if I'm in the right mood and I've got a good fast forward button, I might, 'cause there's a lot of stuff I don't want to watch, but it doesn't get a recommendation. Now, before the Razzies, I'm guessing, there's something called the Stinkers.
Okay.
And this was nominated for 3 Stinkers.
Oh, okay.
One was Worst Picture.
Okay.
Worst Sense of Direction, and in parentheses, Stop Them Before They Direct Again, Sylvester Stallone. And then winner of Worst Actor, Sylvester Stallone. Now listen, I didn't like his performance, but I've seen worse. Like, it wasn't that bad. Like, he didn't stink the joint out. It's just the character kind of sucked.
Yeah. And I don't know, like, when those were awarded or nominated. I don't know. But I can see the motivation behind, like, it's funny to think about these directors that film, that they create their debut and it's not good, but then their follow-up is a fucking banger. And so I'm glad that somebody, whatever studio was behind Rocky 2, I think it was Paramount, threw money behind it and allowed him to make his film, is because
maybe he needed to poop out this,
right,
and then he was ready to go.
Right, and I think Rocky 2 is the best Rocky film. And so that to me is like these directors, and you can go down the list of just different directors that had a shitty debut but followed it up with this great film, and it was deservedly talked about and seen and mass produced on either streaming or DVD, whatever it was. It's very rare that somebody comes along and makes a incredible debut film. I mean, it's happened more recent, I think, than it did before. Like, you talk about what's his face, that Key and Peele guy.
Oh yeah,
what's his name?
Jordan Peele.
And you talk about Jim from The Office. What's his fucking name? John Krasinski. Their directorial debuts were fucking bangers, but that's few and far between. I mean, these guys that make movies, they gotta get shit out of the way. They gotta figure out what works, and I think that's what a lot of what Stallone was doing here in this film. And it worked out. It worked out for him.
Yeah. I'm fine with it. I think it's a piece of history. But to continue our flipped up day, what are we watching next?
So next week, we're gonna watch the Shia LaBeouf film.
Oh Lord,
Peanut Butter Falcon. It's I'm always down to watch a Shia LaBeouf film. I think
I know you are.
I'm a big Shia LaBeouf fan. You call me Shia LaBeouf Stan, if you will.
Oh.
I think it's on Prime right now, but it came out during the pandemic, I think, and I've seen it before. It's a good movie.
Bruce Dern. Hell yeah.
It's a movie that'll like kind of like light something in you, make you feel.
So you have seen this.
I have seen it. I saw.
And how much professional wrestling is in this?
I mean, don't quote me, but I mean at least a good 10 minutes.
Oh,
No,
you bastard!
No, so the one of the main characters is an actor with Down syndrome, plays a character, obviously with Down syndrome, and the character is on a quest to become a pro wrestler, and the movie is about the relationship between Shia LaBeouf and this guy. And how they go about trying to get him to pro wrestling, but it's good. I remember it being good. It's been I think 5 years since it released. I've only seen it once, and I went and saw it. It was a pandemic, so I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it when it came out, but I remember it being good. I think you'll enjoy it. So
Okay.
Anyways, Jeff, where can
I
they
probably will.
Where can they find the music?
You can head over to flipsidemusic.net. You can also go to YouTube, check out the link for the song in particular, the cream of the crop. And once you look and listen, you'll know exactly why it's our music this month. And be sure to check them out on Spotify, SoundCloud, Twitter. All that stuff's down in the description.
Yeah, we appreciate him allowing us to use his music here on the podcast. And if you want to follow the podcast on all your favorite social media platforms, we're at Movie Draft House. You can find us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, right here on YouTube. And if you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to hit the subscribe button when it pops up so you don't miss any future video from the podcast. And
you're going to want to subscribe. It's Wrestling Month.
It's Wrestling Month, baby. But don't forget the podcast releases weekly every Thursday on your favorite podcast streaming platform. And if you want to follow Jeff on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, and let him know, hey, man, it's okay. That pro wrestling career didn't work out for you, but we got you. Actually, I don't know if you had dreams of being a pro wrestler or not, but I just made that up.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah, when you were a wee,
when I was a little kid,
when you're a wee baby, you can find them at Podcast by Jeff.
And if you want to get in touch with Mark and say, give him some suggestions for wrestler names, as opposed to being, because knowing him, he would be Shiny Car, like he recommended last week. But you wanted to give him some good wrestling names. You can find him on Twitter at I Heard You Like.
Listen, that's
you
one.
Can also check out my other podcast.
Yeah.
Called Chronologically. Right now we're going through the works of Stephen King.
Ooh.
And the films based on his works.
Yeah. Hey, let me know when you get to Sylvester Stallone Director Month.
He's got some good shit. The problem is we'd have to watch a lot of non-stuff. Like, we'd have to be like, okay, if we're going to do Rambo, we got to watch all the Rambos, and it'd just be a mess.
It might be a mess.
He does have good shit, though, but I'm not rewatching this. I'm not going to review it again on a podcast. I just can't.
Jeff, any last words?
No, none.